This is the classic Logitech Brio. It can do up to 4K 30 frames per second at Mjpeg and also 1080p 60 frames per second. Now you have to drop it all the way down to 1080 30 to do YUI2 to get it uncompressed. 90-degree field of view. They don't really tell you exactly the specs of the sensor or the lens. But yeah, this has been the best webcam on the market since it came out in 2017, and it only recently has been getting passed up in 2022. This is the Facecam Pro, the first webcam that's able to do 4K 60 frames per second. It does it at Mjpeg. Now you have to dip it all the way down to 1080p 60 frames per second, not 30, but 1080 60 to get uncompressed, and it does this in NV12. Both of these are at their highest frame rate and resolution right now, 4K 30 frames per second on the Logitech Brio, but 4K 60 frames per second on the Facecam Pro. Both of these are using Mjpeg compression, so the actual colors that you're able to get out of this uncompressed, like YUI2 that you can get on the Brio, or NV12 on the Facecam Pro, those are going to look a whole lot better, and I'll go ahead and demonstrate those in a little bit. The skin tone actually is more accurate on the Logitech Brio. In terms of sharpness, these are both pretty even, but the Brio does suffer a lot from the grain, from the noise that you're going to get. It does have a lot smaller of a sensor. It's 1/1.8 inch for the Elgato Facecam Pro. The Brio, they never actually displayed what the actual sensor size is. Some people are speculating that it's 1/1/4 inch. I haven't measured it myself, so I can't tell you, but it is definitely a lot smaller than the Elgato Facecam Pro. I think the dynamic range is actually pretty good on both of these devices, but the Facecam Pro is able to get the details in the black without having to add so much grain to the shot. And neither of them are getting blown out in the highlights as far as the lighting goes. A lot of times when I have like my ring light right next to me, like I do right here, they get blown out, not just my hand, but like my entire face. In fact, it looks like the Brio actually has some sort of post-processing going on that's able to like limit that, because with this harsh light that's reflecting right off of my hand, even the Facecam Pro can't really deal with that. But in my real world use case, I still think that both of these have great dynamic range, but there's way less noise in the shot with the Facecam Pro due to that larger sensor. Now at 1080p 60 frames per second on the Facecam Pro at NV12, and then it is Mjpeg on the Brio. The colors look way more similar. And of course, there's going to be more smoothness than there was before on the Logitech Brio. Now, neither of these have unoffensive colors when they're at 1080p 60 frames per second, but the thing is with the Brio, to get them even better, you've got to use YUI2. And to get that, you got to go down to 1080p 30 frames per second. So let me go ahead and demonstrate that. Now, this is the Logitech Brio at 1080p 30 frames per second YUI2. And while the colors might look a little bit too yellow, you might think like at first, oh, these colors can't be right. Let me actually show you my mirrorless camera. And this is the Sony ZV-1. This is what the colors actually look like. So yeah, the Brio is actually the most accurate right now, and it matches up a lot better to the ZV-1 than the Facecam Pro. But hey, I think the Facecam Pro is still doing a quite decent job for a webcam. Overall, I do like the look of both of these webcams. I do give the advantage to the Facecam Pro. The 4K 60 frames per second smoothness, it's just too good. And while it does have issues with colors at Mjpeg, the Brio is definitely not perfect when it comes to colors either. Now, is this device worth $150 more than the Brio? Personally, no. If I was saving up for something that is more expensive than the Brio, I would just keep on going and then see if I could get a mirrorless camera, like maybe like the Sony ZV-1F. Even though the sensor is a lot bigger on the Facecam Pro, it's not like the lens is ridiculous. Like there's no blurry background that you can get. And as I showed in my full review, neither of these compare anywhere close to an actual mirrorless camera like the Sony ZV-1.